Hello, this will be lesson 2 in our unit. Today we will be talking about surface features of the geosphere. So let's get started. Okay, surface features of the geosphere. The essential question is still the same. How do matter and energy cycle through Earth's systems? Today we are going to be talking about specifically the geosphere. Remember, there's 4 spheres: the hydrosphere, the geosphere, the biosphere, and the atmosphere. Correct. Here are our science standards. Know these standards because these are the ones we're going to have all year. And our objectives today are going to be the questions that you're going to be answering in a separate assignment at the end of the video. So taking notes is strongly suggested because I would rather you take notes and get your answers from the video or from your science book rather than trying to cut and paste them in somebody else's words from the internet. So today you'll be able to define topography, list, define, and explain 3 ways land can be described. You'll be able to list and define 16 different landforms. You'll be able to define constructive forces and destructive forces. You will be able to list and describe 3 constructive forces and 2 destructive forces. You'll be able to explain how a volcano eruption affects each of the 4 spheres in Earth's system. And that's more in depth in your book, actually. And you can define a topographic map and list 4 modern day things that are used in map making. Our substandard is at the bottom. Develop a model to describe the cycling of Earth's materials and the flow of energy that drives this process. And that is what we are currently working towards. Have you ever heard of topography? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Topography is the shape of the land. Land can be described in 3 different ways. They are elevation, that's how high or how low something is from sea level. Relief, that is how high or how low something is relative to the land around it. You can see in the picture there, the mountain versus the hill versus the plateau, then lower to the plain, and finally to the sea. And in math, you've been learning that sea level is at an elevation of 0. And the third way that you can describe land is through landforms. You will be learning 16 different ones today. What is elevation? Elevation is the height of a point above sea level on Earth's surface. So mountains have very high elevation. Flat plains have very low elevation. California actually has both the highest point and the lowest elevation in the United States of America. So what are those spots? Well, the highest point is called Mount Whitney, and it's 14,508 feet above sea level. That's its elevation. The lowest point in California and also in the US is called Death Valley. It's negative 282 feet below sea level. Let's talk about relief for a minute. Remember, we have 3 ways we can describe land. Elevation, the second way is relief. Relief is the difference in elevation between the highest and the lowest points of an area. So the highest point is Mount Whitney, right? And the lowest point in just California in this area is Death Valley. So what is the relief? The relief is the difference from the highest point to the lowest point. So that difference is 14,508 feet. So the relief is 14,508 feet in that area of California. What are landforms? That's the third way to describe land. So we're going to talk about landforms. They're features found on Earth's surface. Many of these you will be familiar with already. So what are the different types? Take a look. We'll be talking about each of these in a little bit more detail in a few slides from now. And some of these I'm sure you're very familiar with. Here's more. Remember, they're features on Earth's surface. Here's some more. Ooh, there's a volcano and a waterfall. Okay, let's start by one at a time talking about these landforms. This is a, did you say mountain? Then you are correct. This is a mountain. Mountains are a landform with high relief and high elevation. So they're high off the ground, and the point to the bottom, there's a very big amount of feet involved from the top of the point down to the bottom ground. A mountain range is mountains that are closely related in shape, structure, location, and age. So you could have one mountain, then you can have a bunch of mountains together to make a mountain range. And then you can have a bunch of mountain ranges together, and that's called a mountain system. And then you can have mountain ranges and mountain systems all together to make a mountain belt. Mountain ranges and mountain systems connect in a long chain. So it goes from little teeny mountain all the way up to huge groupings of mountains. Okay, what is this flat thing? It's high, but it's flat. These are plateaus. Plateaus are a landform with high elevation. They're high off the ground from the sea level, but they have low relief. That means they're not that far from the land around them. So there's not a huge difference from the top of the plateau to the land around it. But they're still high off, they're still very high compared to sea level. Plateaus usually have flat tops. So if you want to think plat and flat to help you remember what a plateau is, you can use flat and plat. What's this? This is a plains or a plain. Plains have low elevation and low relief. That means they're pretty flat. Plains are a large area of flat land, and if you notice, there's no trees in the area. The Great Plains is an area in the United States that's very low and very flat. Coastal plain is a plain that lies along a seacoast. What's this? Speaking of coast, this is a coastline. A coastline is the boundary between the land and the ocean or a lake. Alaska has the longest coastline in the United States of America. It's not California, it's not Florida, but it's actually Alaska. Florida has the second largest coastline in the USA, so Alaska beats it for beach area, except that Alaska doesn't have beaches because it's cold there. What is this? This is a sand dune. A dune is a hill of sand piled up by the wind. Yes, we have sand dunes in the United States. Dunes actually protect the land from ocean waves. That word should say protect, not protest. Dunes protect the land from ocean waves. They build up and they keep the land safe. What is this? Yes, this is a river from up high looking down. Rivers are a natural stream of water that flows into another body of water, such as an ocean, lake, or another river. The Mississippi River is the longest river in the United States. The Nile River is the longest river in the world, and I bet you've heard of both, the Mississippi and the Nile River. This is I bet you don't know this one, this is a delta. A delta is where the water from the river flows and it carries along sediment and sand and clay and dirt. And when it hits the ocean, it slows up. And a lot of that clay and sand and stuff starts to deposit right at the end of that river and make these little areas of mucky land. And that's called a delta. So a river delta is a landform created by deposits of sediment, clay, and sand that is carried by a river. When a river reaches an ocean, the water slows up and the sediment materials in the water sink and they build up, creating that little land area there. All kinds of little parts that are building up in that picture. What is this? This is a valley. A valley is a low area of land between hills and mountains. The Central Valley in California is the largest valley in the United States. California has a lot of different landforms, don't they? What's this? Yeah, this is an island. That's a piece of land completely surrounded by water. Bali, Indonesia was voted the prettiest island in the world. So if you want to take a vacation, that's where you should go. What is this? This is a peninsula. A peninsula has land on water on three sides as the land sticks out into the water. A piece of land almost surrounded by water or projecting out into a body of water. Do you know anything in the United States that's a peninsula? So the state of Florida is actually a peninsula. We also have a peninsula up there in Door County where we have that little finger that comes out of Wisconsin. That is also a peninsula where it juts out into Lake Michigan and surrounds it on 3 sides by water. There's the Florida map, and you can see it sticking out in the water there. This is a hill. A hill is a naturally raised area of land, not as high or craggy as a mountain, and hills are often formed from erosion. Timms Hill is the highest point in Wisconsin. We have very low elevation in Wisconsin. Timms Hill is the highest point. It's in north central Wisconsin. It's 1,951 feet high, which is very, very, very low, actually. So we don't have anything very high in Wisconsin. What is this? This we have a lot of in Wisconsin. These are lakes. We have lots and lots of them. And Minnesota has lots and lots of them. They are formed mainly by the glaciers because of all the glaciers of the past. A large body of fresh water surrounded by land is called a lake. And notice that it's fresh water. That means there's no salt in it. It's fresh water. Lake Superior is the largest lake in the USA, and that's only about a 6-hour drive for us. So we're pretty lucky to have all these lakes right around us. And Lake Michigan itself is the 3rd largest lake in the USA. So we're pretty lucky to have Lake Michigan as well. Okay, here is a glacier. A glacier is a slowly moving mass of ice formed by the accumulation and compaction of snow on mountains. The ancient glaciers formed many of Wisconsin's landforms. We have kettles, we have, like I said, lakes, we have hills. The largest glaciers today are found in Antarctica, where it's always cold. What's this? This is an ocean. An ocean is a very large expanse of salt water. Notice how it's salt water. It's not fresh water. You cannot drink salt water. It will dehydrate you. The Pacific Ocean is the largest ocean in the world. Do you know which coast the Pacific Ocean is off of in the United States? Yes, the West Coast by California. The Atlantic Ocean is on the East Coast by New York or Florida. You cannot drink ocean water. It is full of salt and actually dehydrates you. So if you're in a shipwreck and you're floating out in the ocean, don't drink the water, no matter how thirsty you are. It actually dehydrates you. This is you guessed it, a volcano. A mountain or hill that has a vent through which lava and hot gas are being or have been erupted from the Earth's crust is called a volcano. The state of Hawaii is actually all volcanoes that rose out of the ocean. They erupted from under the sea, they cooled, and they formed a bunch of islands, and those are the Hawaiian Islands. They're actually volcanoes. This is the last landform. This is a waterfall. A cascade of water falling from a height formed when a river or stream flows over a precipice or steep incline. Yosemite Falls is the largest waterfall in the United States of America. Maybe you've been there. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about constructive and destructive forces. The topography of the land is constantly being created and destroyed by different forces. That's what shapes and makes a geosphere change. So constructive forces are going to build land up and they are going to create mountains. And destructive forces are going to tear land down and they are going to wear away land masses. So there are 3 types of constructive forces. The first is the crustal deformation. This occurs when Earth's large tectonic plates, and we're going to be talking about those in a future unit, they push against each other or collide and they form mountains. Another constructive force is volcano eruptions. They actually construct new land, right? Just like Hawaii. Hot lava from inside the Earth spews out of the ground, then cools and forms islands, mountains, hills, or other topography changes. And the other constructive force is deposits of sediment, so deposition. Sediment is dirt and sand and clay. When rock particles are carried away by moving water to new locations and they pile up, you have deposits of sediment. That's where deltas come from as well. Okay, what about destructive forces? There's 2 main destructive forces. The first one is weathering. Weathering is the breaking down of rocks through exposure to the atmosphere. There are two types of weathering. There's mechanical weathering and there's chemical weathering. So mechanical weathering happens when rocks break apart. Chemical weathering happens when iron inside rocks rusts or forms fires, or from fires. So fires can cause chemical weathering as well. And 2 is erosion. That's another destructive force. Erosion is the process by which rock particles are moved through rain, wind, ice, and gravity, pushing them along. So things don't stay the same in the geosphere, do they? Okay, let's talk about the volcano a little more. Here are the four spheres, or how are the four spheres affected when a volcano erupts? Well, the atmosphere is affected because the volcano is going to release ash and gases into the atmosphere, right? And some of that ash is actually going to probably fall in the hydrosphere as well. Then the hardened lava, once it spews out, is going to cool and cut off old river channels when it hardens and makes new land, right? And a new lake may form, changing the biosphere. Actually, that should be changing the geosphere or the hydrosphere. It's the wrong word. Mrs. Kloss, it's not correct. It's the hydrosphere, changing the hydrosphere. I'll have to fix that. And volcanic ash and gases will kill organisms in the biosphere. But later this ash gives nutrients to the soil and to new plants and helps the biosphere regenerate. Okay, I've got a volcano video that I want to show you. So tell us a little bit more about volcanoes before we make our volcano. It's a volcano is a strong constructive force.
Portals into the heart of the earth, they burn. Bottomless cauldrons fueled by an ancient wrath, bubbling and boiling thousands of miles beneath the surface and just waiting to burst through. Volcanoes are scattered across the planet. About 1,500 active volcanoes can be found across the world, though countless others are on the ocean floor. Most volcanoes, whether on land or underwater, are located where tectonic plates meet. In fact, the Ring of Fire, a path that traces the boundaries between several tectonic plates around the Pacific Ocean, contains about 75% of the planet's volcanoes. There are several types of volcanoes, primarily classified by shape and size. Major types include stratovolcanoes, which often appear as tall, steep mountains; shield volcanoes, which are flatter and dome-shaped; calderas, which are large depressions in the ground; and mid-ocean ridges, which are underwater chains of volcanic mountains. No matter their shape or size, all volcanoes emit gas and molten rock. The journey of these emissions begins deep underground in the Earth's core. The core, which can burn as hot as the surface of the sun, transfers its heat to the surrounding rocky mantle. In doing so, the heat melts some of the rock. This molten rock, or magma, is lighter than the surrounding solid rock layer, so it rises through the mantle. The magma then escapes through vents in the Earth's crust, causing volcanic eruptions. Now above ground, this magma is referred to as lava, and it can reach temperatures of over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In addition to lava, volcanoes may erupt with searing hot gas formed in the mantle. In a phenomenon called pyroclastic flow, this gas, combined with hot ash, can race down the sides of a volcano as fast as 100 miles per hour, burning everything in its path. To measure and classify eruptions, scientists developed the Volcanic Explosivity Index, or VEI. It considers various factors, such as the volume of lava, gas, and other emissions from the volcano, along with the height of the eruption cloud above the volcano's summit. The VEI scale begins at 0. Each successive measurement increases logarithmically, meaning that each magnitude is 10 times more powerful than the one before it. The VEI scale does not have an upper limit, but the most catastrophic eruptions measured thus far are categorized as VEI 8. These eruptions occurred thousands and millions of years ago. The most destructive volcanic eruption ever witnessed occurred in Indonesia in 1815. Mount Tambora, a large stratovolcano, erupted with a VEI measurement of 7. The blast caused earthquakes, tsunamis, and pyroclastic flows that decimated the land and took tens of thousands of Indonesian lives. The eruption even destroyed the top of Mount Tambora itself, turning the 13,000-foot tall mountain into a 3,640-foot deep caldera. While volcanoes are some of the most destructive forces of nature, they have also helped make life on Earth possible. Volcanic ash provides nutrients to nearby soil, making the land fertile. And lava, when it cools, hardens into rock and creates new landforms. With heat from the heart of the Earth, volcanoes have helped terraform the planet, making it the rich, dynamic landscape we see today.
Okay, there is our video. Let's continue on with our presentation. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about how do people make maps of the geosphere? Well, how did they used to do it? Well, they used to walk hundreds of hours and sail all over the world to make the maps and draw what they saw. That took them a while, and a lot of times it was treacherous conditions, but people wanted to find out what the Earth was like. Surveying is the process of making maps by determining distances and elevations using instruments and geometry. Yes, there is a use for geometry. Did you know that? Today, people use airplane pictures, satellites, and computers. So this is a topographic map. What is a topographic map? A topographic map shows surface features of an area as if you are viewing it from an airplane above. Topographic maps show elevation, they show relief, and they show the slope of the ground using contour lines, those lines that you see in the background. These things here are contour lines. How do contour lines work? Well, they connect points of equal elevation, and they show how steep or gradual a slope is. Contour lines that are far apart represent flat areas, and lines that are close together represent steep slopes. You could see some steeper slopes over here. They're closer together. You can see some flatter areas maybe over here. The change in elevation from one contour line, so one of these lines to the next, is called a contour interval. Every fifth line is an index contour. It's darker, see? And these lines are darker. The scale of most topographic maps in the US is 1 centimeter on the map equals 0.24 kilometers on the real ground. So you'd have 1 centimeter between here and the line, and that would represent 24 hundredths of a kilometer. How do I find the elevation of a feature using contour lines? Well, you begin at an index contour line. You count the lines up or down the feature, and these are what the different contour lines mean. A V-shaped contour line that points away from a summit indicates a ridge line. A V-shaped contour line pointing towards the summit indicates a valley. A closed loop is a hill, and a closed loop with dashes indicates a hollow in the ground. So it's kind of how you read these kind of maps. What modern day things are we using for map making? Well, we're not walking all over the earth and sailing all over the earth. We are using aerial photography. We get in airplanes and take pictures from high up. There is some aerial photography of a river. Another method of map making today is using satellite imagery. Satellites orbit the Earth and they take pictures and they collect data and they send it back to us. They tell us how things are going. They tell us what's changing on the geosphere, or maybe the atmosphere, or whether our weather conditions, right? We also have something called the Global Positioning System that helps us locate positions on the Earth using satellites and receivers. You need 3 satellites to have a GPS locate the position you're standing on the Earth. So it takes 3 of them. We also have something called a GIS. That's a Geographic Information System. It's a computer system that produces interactive maps called data layers. So it makes a map that looks like that on the right there. Or it can also show boundaries of counties and cities. Okay, now we're to the point of answering our questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this as a separate Google document for you. These are the questions I'm going to have you answer. Again, you can watch the video as often as you want. You can take notes. You can get all of your answers from the video as well as from your science book. So what are the questions you're going to answer? What is topography? You're going to list, define, and explain 3 ways that land can be described. And so I don't want you to just list them, right, by elevation. I want you to describe what is elevation. You're going to define it. You're going to explain what it means in your own words. Then you're going to list and define 16 different landforms. You're going to talk about them, right? You're not going to just list them. You're not going to just say dunes. You're going to say what dunes are. You're going to write what are constructive forces? That's a definition. What are destructive forces? That's a definition. You're going to list and describe 3 constructive forces. So not only list them, but describe them as well, right? One of them would be a volcano, right? What else? You're going to list and describe 2 destructive forces, and you're going to make sure you describe them as well as list them. You're going to explain how a volcano eruption affects each of the 4 spheres in Earth's system. You got some from this video. You can also look in your book. There's more information there. What is a topographic map? List 4 modern day things that are used in map making. And then you have an extra credit question. You're going to explain how to read a contour map and what the lines mean. You can use this video, but you're also going to have to do a little research in your science book. I believe it's on page, I actually have the book here. Let's take a look. You can find contour lines on page 18 and 19. So page 18 and 19 would be great for you to do that extra credit question. So we are done with our lesson for today. So I'll see you next time. Bye.